Wyoming Territory, 1886. Clara Reyes staggered through the dying light, her dress torn, her newborn twins clutched desperately to her chest as the dust of Dry Hollow swallowed her footsteps. Every door she begged at had slammed shut. Every face had turned away, and now her strength was failing faster than the sun. She collapsed to her knees beside the empty trail, breath trembling, vision blurring, whispering the truth she'd tried to outrun. If I die here, my girls die with me. Hoofbeats thundered in the distance, not safety, not yet. Only the terrifying question of whether the rider was mercy or doom. Before we continue, if you're watching this from anywhere in the world, leave your city name in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Jonah Mercer shouldered the cabin door open with his boot, the weight of the woman near breaking his arms. She was light as a half-empty grain sack, but limp in a way that made his chest hurt. Two swaddled bundles were pressed between them, tiny faces buried in torn cloth. "Easy," he muttered, more to himself than her. "You're in, darling. You made it." The room smelled of coffee grounds and old smoke, the same as it had every night for years. But tonight the silence felt different. It wasn't just his anymore. He laid the woman on his bed, the only bed in the cabin. Her dark hair spilled over his pillow, sweat sticking it to her bruised cheek. A faint line of dried blood cut across her temple. Her dress was torn, dust and road grit clinging to the fabric. She was breathing, but shallow, as if each breath had to climb a mountain. The twins squirmed and fussed in his arms, their tiny cries thin and raw. "All right, little ones," he whispered, voice rough from disuse. "One thing at a time." He set them in a wooden crate by the bed, lined quick with one of his clean shirts. Their fists flailed, rooting for warmth. He grabbed another blanket from the trunk and tore it in half, tucking the cloth around their skinny legs. Behind him, the woman's eyelids fluttered. He heard the scratch of air drag into her lungs. "Hey," Jonah said quietly, "you're at Mercy Ridge Ranch. You're not out there on that road no more." Her eyes opened, unfocused at first, then locking on his face, brown, wide and wild with fear. "Where?" Her voice broke. She swallowed, wincing. "The babies. They're here," he answered. "Both of them, loud as a churchyard on Sunday." Her gaze darted to the crate. She tried to sit, but pain folded her in half. A soft cry escaped her lips. "Easy." He put a hand on her shoulder, careful, as if she might shatter. "You're hurt bad. You need to lie still." Her fingers clutched weakly at his sleeve. "Listen." She licked cracked lips. "Mr. Mercer, you said?" He blinked. "That's right. Jonah Mercer." "Jonah!" She tasted the name like it might be her last. "If I don't make it through the night," her eyes brightened with sudden, fierce desperation, "promise me you'll keep them. My girls. Don't let them go back. Don't let anyone take them back." His stomach tightened. "You're talking like you're already gone." He shook his head once. "You're still breathing. That counts for something on this land." "It's my day alive," she whispered. "The wounds. They're fatal. I feel it." A tear slipped down her temple into his pillow. "I don't care what happens to me. Just don't let them grow up thinking they're a curse." He'd heard those words before, in other mouths, about other women. It settled heavy and ugly in his chest. He bent closer, meeting her gaze. "I'm not promising you death," he said, slow and firm. Not while you're still fighting to talk. But I will tell you this. No one's taken those girls from here unless I say so. You hear me? Something in her shoulders loosened. She closed her eyes, a shuddering breath leaving her. Their names, she breathed. Lucia and Rosa. I'm Clara Reyes. Lucia and Rosa, he repeated. Clara, he straightened. All right, first things first. Food, water, and getting that fever down. You can argue with me about dying later. He moved around the cabin with a stiff, practical urgency. Coffee pot off the hook, water into the kettle, old stew scraped from the pot and set to warm. He poured cool water into a tin cup and returned to the bedside. Can you drink? She tried. The first swallow sent a wince through her. The second went down easier. A little color crept back into her face. One of the babies wailed, thin and outraged. Jonah glanced at the crate, then at Clara. Guess they don't care much for my speeches, he muttered. They want milk. I've got a goat that might argue with them, but we'll see. A ghost of a smile touched her lips and was gone. You're kind, she murmured. You don't even know what they'll say about you. Taking us in. Jonah's jaw tightened. They've been talking about me for years. Haven't done me much good or harm yet. He turned away before she could see the flicker of old pain behind his eyes. Outside, he moved fast. Milk from the goat, quick and careful, breath fogging in the night air. His mind kicked up memories he usually kept buried. A younger man with his same eyes, laughing in Spanish. A woman with dark braids like Clara's, clutching a packed bag while the Crowley men shouted. He shoved the memory away and stepped back into the cabin. He poured warm goat's milk into a small bottle he'd kept from when his sister visited with her baby years ago. He hadn't thrown it out. He didn't know why until now. Come on, little Rosa, he murmured, trying to remember how his sister had done it. The baby latched and sucked greedily, whole body relaxing. The other one followed soon after, tiny hands curling around, his rough fingers. He felt something give in his chest, like a lock he hadn't known was there shifting. You're doing good, Clara whispered hoarsely from the bed, watching him through half-lidded eyes. I'm guessing at best, he said. But guessing is better than leaving you on the road. The latch on the door rattled suddenly, making him stiffen. Before he could reach for the rifle in the corner, the door swung inward and an older woman stepped in without knocking. Jonah Mercer, if you don't answer when I knock, I assume you died in that chair and I've come to claim your coffee. Martha Hale stopped mid-sentence, her sharp eyes taking in the scene. Well, looks like you've gone and done something foolish. Martha, Jonah said, letting out the breath he'd been holding. Didn't expect you tonight. Clearly. She shut the door behind her with a solid thump. Her gaze moved from Clara on the bed to the twins in the crate, then back to Jonah. You gonna introduce me, or should I guess? Jonah shifted. This is Clara Reyes. Those are her girls. Found them out past the South Ridge. They were on their last legs. Martha stepped closer, her lined face softening as she looked at the babies. She touched Clara's forehead with the back of her hand, then clucked her tongue. Fever, bruises, half-starved. Her voice dropped, losing some of its edge. You came from Dry Hollow, girl? Clara swallowed. From a house near it, she said faintly. Didn't feel much like home. Martha's mouth pressed into a thin line. She'd seen enough to fill the rest in. This town eats its own sometimes, she said quietly. especially if it's own or women who don't fit in the little box men built for 'em. She looked at Jonah. You know what tongues will do with this, don't you? Widow or not, foreign blood or not, they'll have a story by dawn. Jonah met her stare, steady. Let him talk. Martha held his gaze a moment longer, then nodded once. Good, because it's too late to back out anyway. She set a small bundle on the table. I brought broth, some herbs for fever, and extra linens. I'll send word to Doc if she doesn't turn for the better by morning. Clara blinked, tears threatening again. You don't even know me, she whispered. Martha turned to her, voice brisk but not unkind. Honey, I don't need to know you to see what's been done to you. That's enough for tonight. Jonah watched Clara's face as those words sank in. For the first time since he'd picked her up off the road, the stark terror in her eyes eased, just a fraction. Not gone, but edged with something else. Hope, he thought. Fragile as those babies' fingers, but they're all the same. Morning came slow over Mercy Ridge, the kind of pale dawn that crept in quiet, afraid to disturb whatever sorrow the night had held. Jonah Mercer had slept in the chair by the bed, boots still on, head bowed like he'd fought sleep until it pinned him down. The cabin was warm from the fire he'd fed every hour, but Clara Reyes shook with chills beneath the quilts. When the twins woke first, thin whimpers rising from the crate, Jonah jerked upright, his back cracked in protest. All right, I hear you, he muttered, rubbing his face. Morning to you, too. Clara stirred, voice barely a breath. Are they hungry again? Jonah crossed to her side. Looks like it. Don't you try getting up. Fever's still on you. She tried anyway, her stubbornness stronger than her strength. He pressed a hand to her shoulder gently but firmly. Clara. No. Her body sagged as if the word alone drained her. I should help, she whispered. I'm their mother. You're trying to die is what you're doing, he said, softer than the words sounded. Let me carry a little of this. Ain't nobody keeping score here. She closed her eyes, ashamed, and grateful in a way that scared her more than the fever. No man had ever told her she could rest without cost. Jonah lifted Lucia first, the smaller twin, and laid her on the table to change her. He worked slowly, carefully, treating the tiny girl like she was spun glass. The cloth was damp and cold. He grimaced. All right, sweetheart, he murmured, reaching for the basket of clean strips Martha had brought. Let's get you sorted. As he turned Lucia on her side, something hard and metallic slid loose from the fold of her swaddle and clinked onto the tabletop. Jonah froze. It was a small iron pendant, oval-shaped, scratched by time, a single initial carved into the front. M.R. His breath vanished. M.R. Mercer Reyes. Or, he knew better, Matthew Mercer, his little brother. He picked it up with shaking fingers. He hadn't seen the pendant in years, not since Matthew had worn it the day he left town with a bag over his shoulder and a woman with braids standing at his side. Jonah remembered that day like a brand on his skin. Jonah, you all right? Clara whispered, half sitting despite her weakness. He snapped back, fist closing around the pendant. Dropped something. Don't worry yourself. But his voice wasn't steady, and Clara knew it. Jonah forced himself to finish changing Lucia, though every movement felt stiff, like the air had turned to stone. When both babies were settled, he tucked the pendant deep in his pocket, hand lingering there a moment, like touching it burned. He couldn't let Clara see. Not yet. not until he understood exactly what it meant. He poured goat's milk into the bottle and fed the girls, switching between them with practiced rhythm. Their tiny hands curled around his knuckles again, and that same crack in his chest widened. Clara watched him through half-lidded eyes, her face soft with something like disbelief. "You're gentle," she murmured. He shrugged. "Don't know about gentle, just don't want to break 'em." "No," she whispered. "You're gentle. Not many men are, where I came from." Jonah didn't ask where. He didn't need to. Her bruises told the story. When the girls were fed and sleeping again, he brought Clara a cup of warm broth. Her hand shook as she held it, so he steadied the cup with his own. "Thank you," she whispered, cheeks warming with embarrassment. "You don't need to thank me for keeping people alive in my house," he said. "Seems like basic decency." Her lips trembled. "Decency ain't free, Jonah. Folks always want something back." He stiffened, anger rising behind his ribs. Not at her, but at whoever taught her that kindness had a price. "That ain't how it works here," he said quietly. "You hear me? You and those girls ain't debt. You're people. You need help. So I'm helping. Nothing more to it." Tears filled her eyes, and she blinked them away fast, as if ashamed to be seen unraveling. He looked away to give her space and tended the fire, but his mind spun. Matthew, his baby brother, the one with laughter like wind chimes and fists too quick to raise when someone was bullied. The one Jonah failed to protect when Crowley turned the whole damn town against him. He remembered the day they dragged Matthew out of the saloon, accusing him of trespass, of theft, of tainting decent folks' daughters, just because he loved a woman with Mexican blood. Jonah had stood in the doorway and said nothing. Cowardice wore skin colder than winter, and Jonah had worn it well. Then came the accident, a broken wagon wheel on a lonely ridge. No witnesses, no justice. Just a grave Jonah couldn't bear to stand beside long enough to apologize. Now the pendant was here, in Lucia's blanket. His stomach churned. He scrubbed a hand over his jaw and forced himself back to the table. Clara watched him, studying the lines of his face. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said softly. "You should rest," he replied too quickly. She held his gaze for a long moment. He couldn't read her expression, fear, maybe, or intuition, or something deeper. Then she nodded, but her brow stayed tight. A knock sounded at the door. 2 sharp taps, no hesitation. Jonah tense as a drawn rope. He opened it to find Martha Hale again, carrying a tin of ointment and a bundle of herbs. "Well?" she demanded. "Did the fever break, or did she go and die on us?" "She's alive," Jonah answered. "Still weak." Martha brushed past him toward Clara. "Roll up your sleeves, sweetheart. I got something for the bruising." Clara obeyed slowly, revealing a line of deep purple welts along her arm. Martha clucked under her breath, shaking her head. "Men who do this ought to be buried face down so the devil don't waste time," she muttered. Clara flinched at the touch of the ointment. Jonah's hand curled into a fist. "Was it her husband?" Martha asked quietly. "Or his kin?" Clara hesitated, then nodded once. "That's all I need to know," Martha said. "Dry Hollow's got a sickness in it when it comes to women like you. Folks talk big about decency, but don't like helping those who need it most." Jonah's jaw tightened. "They'll talk more when they hear she's here." Martha gave him a look over her shoulder. "Then let 'em talk. I'm too old to care what cowards think." Clara stared at the older woman, eyes wet. Why are you helping me?" Martha shrugged. "'Cause someone helped me once. And this land don't get better unless somebody decides to be better than what it's been." Jonah swallowed hard. He'd never heard it put that plain. When Martha finally left, promising to return at dusk with bread, the cabin settled again into a heavy quiet. Clara shifted weakly, watching the twins sleep. "Jonah," she whispered, "I don't want trouble to follow me here." He sat beside the bed, arms resting on his knees. "Trouble don't need much of a map to find me, and I ain't scared of yours." She stared at him a moment, as if trying to measure the truth inside him. "You don't understand," she said, voice trembling. "People hurt us because the girls are—" She stopped, biting down on the fear rising in her throat. Jonah leaned forward. "Clara, whatever reason they gave, it ain't on you, and it sure as hell ain't on those babies." Her breath caught. No one had ever said that to her. Not once. Jonah rose, pacing the cabin, the pendant in his pocket burning like a coal. He couldn't tell her. Not yet. Not until he was sure the past wouldn't crush her all over again. But he knew one thing for certain. If Crowley had a hand in Matthew's death, if those twins were Mercer blood, if Clara had been cast out for the same reason Crowley once hunted his brother, then this wasn't charity. It was unfinished justice. And Jonah Mercer had run from that long enough. Jonah Mercer saddled his mare before the sun fully cleared the ridge, boots crunching through the frost that clung to the early light. Clara Reyes was asleep at last, the fever easing after a long night, and the twins lay curled together in the crate beside the stove. He didn't want to leave them, not even for an hour, but the milk was running low, and Clara needed willow bark and bandages. Mercy Ridge Ranch could keep many things, but not time. He ran a hand over the mare's neck. "Just in and out," he muttered. "No stopping, no talking, no foolishness." But Jonah knew Dry Hollow didn't let a man slip through unseen. Not him. Not anymore. He rode fast, letting the wind clear the tightness from his chest. But the moment he reached the main street, the peace shattered. Heads turned. Conversations halted. A few men at the blacksmith's post straightened, their eyes narrowing. "There he is," someone muttered. "Mercer brought something home last night." "What kind of something?" "Heard it was a woman, and 2 kids." "Kids? His?" "Hell if I know. But folks don't pick strays for nothing." Jonah kept his eyes forward, jaw locked. Dry Hollow always had a way of twisting any rumor into a noose. Last time it had been his brother Matthew wearing it. Jonah wasn't about to let the same happen here. He tied the mare outside the supply store, ignoring the stairs that bore into his spine. Inside, Mr. Pratt looked up from arranging jars of salve. "Morning," Jonah said curtly. "Mercer." Pratt leaned onto the counter, voice casual but eyes sharp with curiosity. "Saw your lantern burning late last night." "So?" "So," Pratt drawled. "Folks don't burn lamps that long unless something's wrong, or something's new." Jonah gripped the counter. "I need goat milk powder, willow bark, and cloth. Plenty of it." Pratt raised a brow. "For who?" "None of your business." "That so?" Pratt tilted his head. "Town's full of business, especially when a man like you shows up with babies." The words struck harder than a fist. Jonah felt them in his ribs, in the old bruises guilt had left behind. He steadied his breath. "Bag it up," he said. "Charge whatever you want. Just keep your mouth shut." Pratt smirked but did as told, moving slower than necessary, letting the silence stretch. As Jonah fished coins from his pocket, a sound behind him cut through the store. A soft, disbelieving laugh. "Didn't think you were the type," a ranch hand named Ellis said, leaning in the doorway. "Bringing home a woman who looks used up. Lucky she didn't die on your porch." Jonah's shoulders went rigid. He didn't turn. "Say it again." Ellis whistled. "Just saying. Mercer taking in a brown-skinned widow with twins? That's a story Dry Hollow won't swallow gentle." Jonah spun then, eyes dark as river mud before a storm. "They're children. She's hurt. You don't know a damn thing." Ellis lifted his hands, mocking surrender. "Easy now. Ain't my fault you picked up someone else's trouble." The last word dug deepest. Trouble. That's what they'd called Matthew's woman, too. Trouble for her blood. Trouble for her accent. Trouble for daring to love a Mercer. Jonah stepped forward, voice low enough to warn even the dust motes. "You talk like that about her again, you and me won't end this inside a store." Ellis held his gaze a second too long, then backed off. "Whatever you say, Mercer." Jonah took his supplies and walked out before he did something he'd regret. But the words clung to him all the way home. "You picked up someone else's trouble. Town won't swallow that gentle. Widow, brown, children." He'd thought Dry Hollow might have changed in the years since Matthew died. It hadn't. The judgment was the same. Sharper even, aimed now at the woman lying in his bed and the babies clinging to breath in his cabin. When Jonah returned to the ranch, he found Clara half sitting up, eyes heavy with exhaustion. "You shouldn't be awake," he said quickly, dropping the supplies near the stove. "I heard the babies," she replied, voice small. "And you were gone. I thought maybe something happened in town." "Town's fine," Jonah lied, shrugging off his coat. "You hungry?" "Not much," she whispered. "But the girls, they're fed, sleepin'." She sagged with relief, then glanced at him, studying the tightness around his eyes. Something's wrong. He almost denied it, but her gaze was too clear, too familiar with fear. "People are talking," he admitted. Clara looked down at the blanket. "They always talk, especially about women like me." Jonah knelt beside the bed. "Clara, they don't know you. They don't know anything that matters." She swallowed hard. "Maybe they don't need to. Sometimes a woman don't get judged for what she did, but for what she is." His chest ached at her words. They rang too close to memories he tried to bury, memories of voices spitting the same venom at Matthew's love. He reached out, hesitating only a second before touching her hand. "Listen to me. Those folks in town, their words don't run this ranch. I do. And as long as you and the girls are under my roof, you're safe." Her fingers tightened weakly around his. "You're taking on trouble, Jonah." "Then trouble's got a home now," he said, "and it don't scare me." Her eyes softened, shimmering with something fragile and bright. "I don't want to be a burden," she whispered. "Not after all you've done." He opened his mouth to speak, but the twins stirred, soft cries filling the cabin. Jonah stood, moving towards them with a tenderness that almost surprised him. Clara watched him lift Rosa, patting her back with clumsy care, and something inside her chest shifted, an ache blooming into warmth. No man had ever held her babies like they mattered. Not one. And as Jonah rocked the child, humming low, Clara felt, for the first time in a long time, the faintest flicker of something she'd thought was dead. Hope. Jonah Mercer heard the horses long before he saw them. a thudding rhythm rolling across the dirt like a warning drum. He stepped out onto the porch, wiping soup from his hands, and narrowed his eyes as three riders crested the low rise that led to Mercy Ridge Ranch. Barrett Crowley rode in the center, upright, clean, and smug as a rattler sunning on a rock. His coat was pressed, boots polished, and beside him rode a lawyer-looking man with spectacles that didn't belong anywhere near dust. Behind them trailed a wiry ranch hand Jonah recognized as one of Crowley's boys. This wasn't a friendly visit, and Jonah knew it before they even stopped. "Mercer," Crowley greeted, tipping his hat with a smile that held no warmth. "Fine morning you have here." Jonah didn't return the smile. "What do you want, Crowley?" "Oh, nothing too difficult," Barrett drawled, swinging one leg over his saddle and stepping down. His boots hit the ground with a soft thud. "Just a conversation, a matter of community concern." Jonah crossed his arms. "I don't recall asking the community for a thing." Barrett chuckled, slow and rehearsed. "No, but the community sure noticed your company." Jonah's jaw flexed. "Say what you came to say." Barrett dusted off his coat, gaze sliding toward the cabin door as if sniffing for Clara's scent. "First, I want to congratulate you. Taking in a stray woman and 2 infants? Quite charitable." He leaned in slightly. "Though some might argue, unwise." "Get to it," Jonah said, voice flat. Barrett nodded toward the man in spectacles, who stepped forward with a leather folder. "My associate here will explain." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Mr. Mercer, our records show you maintain a sizable loan with the Dry Hollow Bank. Overseen, of course, by Mr. Crowley's office. Said loan is overdue." Jonah's stare could have cut steel. "I know what I owe." "Indeed," the man replied, "and Mr. Crowley has graciously offered to help you settle that debt. Entirely." Jonah waited, his shoulders tensed like a coiled rope. Barrett smoothed his mustache. "All I need, Jonah, are the twins." A cold wind cut across Jonah's spine. "What?" "The girls," Barrett said lightly, as if asking for firewood. "Word is you picked them up off the road. No kin, no ties. Best they're placed with folks who know what to do with cases like theirs." Jonah stepped forward. "They're not yours." Barrett raised a brow. "Not yours either." "They ain't property," Jonah said, voice suddenly deep. "And they damn sure ain't going anywhere." Barrett's smile sharpened. "You're in no position to make noble choices. Mercy Ridge sits on the edge of foreclosure. I'm trying to give you a way out. Give me the children, and your ranch stays yours." Everything inside Jonah went still, deadly quiet. Rage didn't flash. No. It boiled slow, thick, and controlled, like tar heating under sun. "You listen to me," he said, stepping close enough that their boots nearly touched. "You come onto my land, talk about taking babies like they're cattle? That tells me you don't know a damn thing about me." Barrett's eyes glinted. "I know this. Those babies bring trouble, and if trouble grows, you'll lose everything. One signature from this man," he tapped the lawyer's folder, "and your ranch dissolves like dust." "And if I refuse?" Jonah asked. Barrett's smile vanished. "Then Dry Hollow will know you're harboring a woman who doesn't belong and children who carry the wrong blood. And the eyes on you now, they'll turn sharper, harder, hungry." Jonah didn't punch him, didn't shout, didn't even curse. He stepped back once, slow, measured breathing filling his chest. "You done here," he said. "Right off my land." Barrett snorted. "Think about it, Mercer. Pride is expensive. Babies even more. Then he mounted, tugging his reins. You've got until Sunday. The three men rode off, dust trailing behind them like a dirty tail. Jonah stood where they'd left him, fists trembling though he forced them open. He stared after their silhouettes until they vanished behind the ridge. Inside, Clara had woken. She'd heard raised voices, enough to see fear shadow her face. When Jonah walked in, she clutched the blanket close. Jonah, who was that? Nobody we need worry about, he lied. Don't, she whispered. I heard him. He said something about owing and the girls. Jonah, if my being here is putting your home in danger. It ain't you, Jonah snapped, then flinched at his own tone. He dragged a hand through his hair. Clara, I didn't mean, it's not your fault. She looked down, voice cracking. He wants them, doesn't he? The twins. Jonah's silence was answer enough. Clara covered her mouth, shoulders shaking. I knew it. I knew trouble would follow. Jonah, you don't know what those men are capable of. I won't let you get hurt because of us. He stepped close, gripping the back of the chair to keep from reaching for her. You didn't bring trouble. Trouble's been here long before you came. Men like Crowley make sure of that. Her teary eyes rose, searching his. What do we do? She whispered. Jonah took a breath, long and heavy. We stand. We don't bow. Clara shook her head. You can't fight a man like him. Oh, I can, Jonah said quietly. And I will. She didn't believe him, not fully. Jonah didn't blame her. He barely believed himself. But as he looked at the twins sleeping together in the crate, Matthew's blood, Clara's hope, the future he'd failed once already, something inside him solidified like iron cooling into a blade. Crowley had taken one Mercer. He wouldn't take another. Not while Jonah still drew breath. Midnight wrapped Mercy Ridge Ranch in a cold so sharp it almost rang. The fire had burned low, shadows trembling across the log walls like restless spirits. Clara Reyes lay awake, listening to the breaths around her, Jonah's slow and heavy from the chair, the twins' soft whimpers from the crate, and the wind tapping at the shutters like it wanted in. She couldn't stop shaking, not from fever this time, but from a truth she'd known since the day she fled Dry Hollow's edge. Trouble always found her, and men like Barrett Crowley never stopped until they stripped a woman down to nothing. Jonah shouldn't have to pay for that. Not again. Not because of her. She turned her head toward him. Even in sleep, Jonah Mercer looked worn, jaw locked tight as if fighting some battle in his dreams. The lantern beside him had burned nearly dry. He must have sat there for hours, watching over her, protecting her, feeding her daughters, fighting her fever like it was his own. Her throat tightened. I shouldn't be here. When the twins stirred, Clara pushed herself upright. Weakness flooded her limbs, but determination steadied her. She gathered them close, whispering apologies against their tiny foreheads. Mama's got to keep you safe, she breathed. Even if that means leaving the only kind man we've found. Her legs shook violently when she stood. The room spun, but she held on, one hand braced against the wall. She wrapped the girls in extra cloth, tucked bread and a flask of water into a satchel, and crept toward the door. The cabin floor creaked. Jonah stirred. Her heart stopped. She froze in the dark, breathing shallow, waiting for him to open his eyes. But he didn't. He only mumbled something low and aching, a name she'd never heard from him before. Matthew? Her breath caught. His brother's name. She didn't know the whole story, but she knew sorrow when she heard it. And she knew, deep, bone deep, that she had no right to add more weight to a man already bent with grief. Clara slipped out the back door. The night cut into her like a blade. Her feet sank into cold dirt as she made her way toward the barn, twins held close. The moon was thin and sharp, light spilling over the corral fence and the mare shifting inside. Clara's breath fogged in front of her, shaking with every step. Just a few miles, she told herself, over the ridge, into the next county. Somewhere Crowley wouldn't bother chasing a woman half dead with 2 babies. But halfway to the barn, a lantern flared behind her. Clara. Her whole body stiffened. The twins whimpered. Jonah approached, lantern in one hand, his coat thrown over his nightshirt. His hair was tousled, eyes clouded with sleep. But the second he saw the satchel on her shoulder, the bundled twins in her arms, everything inside him snapped awake. "What are you doing?" he asked, voice low, tight, dangerous. She swallowed. "Jonah, I have to go." "The hell you do?" She backed a step. He stopped instantly, as if afraid to spook her like a frightened colt. "You heard what Crowley said," Clara whispered. "He'll take your home. He'll take everything. If I leave now—" "You think you runnin' fixes this?" Jonah said, jaw locking. "You think leavin' saves me?" Tears filled her eyes. "I won't let you lose Mercy Ridge because of us." Jonah stepped closer, lantern light carving grief into every line of his face. "Clara, listen. Crowley been after this land long before you ever showed up on it. You didn't bring trouble here. Trouble walked in with his damn boots polished." She shook her head, voice breaking. "Jonah, you don't understand what he'll do. I've seen it. And I won't have you hurt because you were kind to me." His voice cracked. "Kindness ain't what this is." Clara flinched. He knew she misunderstood, so he forced himself to go on. "You think I'm doing this out of duty?" he whispered. "Out of pity?" "Clara, I'm here because I made the mistake once of not standing with the people who needed me most. My brother died because I kept my mouth shut." Her breath faltered. "Your brother? He loved a woman like you," Jonah said quietly. "And Crowley hated him for it. I stayed silent. I didn't fight back. And he paid the price." Clara felt the ground tilt beneath her. The wind stilled. The world narrowed to Jonah's voice. "I won't watch another family get hurt because I looked away," he said. "And I sure as hell won't watch you walk into the dark thinking you're a burden." Her tears spilled freely now. "But Jonah, if you lose your ranch—" "Then I lose it standing up, not crawling." His voice shook. "I can rebuild land. I can't rebuild the shame of abandoning someone again." The words hit her harder than the wind ever had. She held the twins tighter, chest aching. "Jonah, I don't want to be the reason you fight a war you can't win." He stepped closer, letting the lantern's glow soften the harsh angles of his face. "Clara, you and those girls ain't a war. You're the reason I'm willing to fight at all." Her lips trembled. She didn't know how to hold a kindness like that. Didn't know how to accept it without fear eating her alive. She whispered, "I don't deserve this." Jonah's voice dropped to a raw whisper. "Maybe not. Maybe neither do I. But we damn sure need it." The twins whimpered again. Clara looked down at them, tiny, fragile, innocent, and then back up at the man standing in front of her, breath warm in the cold night. He wasn't trying to cage her. He was asking her to stay, begging, in the only way a quiet man knew how. Clara's knees buckled. Jonah reached her just in time, steadying her with both hands. "I've got you," he murmured. And for the first time since she'd fled Dry Hollow, she let someone hold her without flinching, without shame, without the instinct to run. Just long enough for Jonah to whisper into her hair, "You don't leave this ranch, Clara. Not tonight. Not until you know you're worth staying for." Dawn crept in, pale and tired, as if even the sun was hesitant to cross the threshold of Mercy Ridge after the night that had passed. Clara Reyes woke curled against the sturdy warmth of Jonah's coat. The twins nestled between them in the bed he'd insisted she take. Jonah had slept in the chair again, if he'd slept at all. His head was bent forward, chin brushing his chest, and exhaustion lay heavy across his shoulders. For a moment, just a fragile, stolen heartbeat, Clara allowed herself to wonder what it would be like to wake to this sight every morning. The thought terrified her. Hope always had teeth. She eased upright. A soft clink hit the floor. Jonah stirred. "You all right?" But Clara wasn't listening. Her gaze had dropped to the wooden boards beside the bed, where a small iron pendant lay half hidden in the folds of the quilt. Her breath stopped. No, it couldn't be. She reached for it with trembling fingers, brushing away dust. The metal was worn, edges dulled by years of handling. A single carved letter glinted faintly in the morning light. M.R. Her throat closed. Not again. Not this ghost. Not here. Not now. Jonah rose fast when he saw her expression. "Clara, wait." But she was already shaking her head, gripping the pendant so tight it dug into her palm. "Where did you get this?" Her voice cracked. "Jonah, who gave this to you?" He didn't answer. Couldn't answer. And that silence was enough. Clara's breath came hard and uneven. Memories clawed their way back, jagged, unwelcome. A warm smile. A promise whispered in Spanish and English both. A man with the same stubborn jawline as Jonah. The same dark eyes. The same quiet, steadfast gentleness. "Matt," she whispered, voice splintering. Jonah flinched as if struck. "Clara, listen." "He wore this," she choked out, clutching the pendant to her chest. "He never took it off. Not once. He said it was the only thing his brother ever gave him." Jonah closed his eyes, pain twisting through his features. It was. "Then why?" Clara gasped. "Is it here? In my daughter's blankets? Why, Jonah?" Her voice broke entirely. "Tell me they didn't kill him. Tell me it wasn't Crowley. Tell me." Jonah reached for her, gently, cautiously, as if approaching a wounded animal. "Clara, please, let me explain." "Explain what?" she cried. "Explain how the man who promised to marry me ended up in a ditch with no justice? Explain why Crowley's men dragged me out of town when I was pregnant? Explain why my daughters," her voice shattered, "are being hunted like livestock?" The twins stirred at her trembling tone. Clara clutched them protectively, instinctively, her whole body curling around them. Jonah's voice was raw. "I didn't know you were the woman Matt wrote about." Clara stiffened. "His letter," Jonah continued, swallowing hard. "His last. He said he'd found someone. A woman the town didn't deserve. A woman he meant to marry." His eyes lifted to hers, breaking open. "I didn't know it was you." Clara's vision blurred. "And the babies?" Jonah looked down, at them, at her, at the pendant scorching the space between them like a brand. "I think they're his," he whispered. "Clara, I think they're my blood." Silence fell so deep it felt like the earth itself stopped breathing. Clara shook her head violently. No, no, Jonah. If that's true, if they know the girls are Mercers, then Crowley won't stop. He'll destroy everything you have left. Jonah let out a breath that trembled. He already tried. Clara pressed the twins closer, tears spilling unchecked. You could have sent us away. I'm not making that mistake again, Jonah said softly. I turned my back once. I won't do it to Matt's family, or to you. Her sob came sharp and helpless. I didn't want you tied to my past. I am tied, he said, stepping closer. By blood, by truth, by what those girls deserve. I can't, Clara whispered, shaking. I can't be the reason you lose everything. Jonah knelt in front of her, taking her shaking hands into his own. Listen to me. This ranch ain't worth more than what's right. Not anymore. Not after what happened to Matt. She looked at him then, really looked, at the regret, at the guilt, at the fragile, breaking hope. You cared for him, she whispered. Jonah's voice cracked. He was my little brother. I failed him. And now you want to fix it with us? No, he said fiercely. I want to fix it because of you. Because you and those babies. You're what he died protecting. The words hit her like a storm, terrible and tender all at once. She whispered, Jonah, I'm scared. I know. I don't know how to stay. I don't know how to accept help without fear dragging me under. His thumb brushed her knuckles. Then we learned together, one breath at a time. Clara swallowed, tears tracing her cheeks. If they're Mercers, Crowley will come harder. I'll be ready. And if he takes your land? Jonah lifted her chin so she'd meet his eyes. A man's worth ain't counted in acres. It's counted in who he refuses to abandon. Something inside her cracked wide open. Grief and love and terror all tangled. She leaned forward until her forehead touched his. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. You don't have to, he murmured. Not alone. The twins whimpered between them, small fists waving. Jonah gently placed a hand over their tiny backs. Our blood or not, he said softly. They're mine to protect. Clara closed her eyes and let the truth settle, heavy and terrifying and miraculous. Matthew's daughters, Jonah's nieces, her whole world. She wasn't alone anymore, but the danger had never been closer. Because now the truth was out. Now the bloodline Crowley tried to erase was breathing under Jonah's roof. And the next move would be Crowley's. The wind carried dust across Dry Hollow the following morning, tossing it in restless swirls through the open street, as though the land itself sensed something was coming. Jonah Mercer tightened the saddle strap on his horse with a firmness that betrayed the storm inside him. Clara stood a few steps away, the twins cradled against her chest, her breath shallow, her eyes rimmed with fear and determination in equal measure. Jonah, you don't owe the town anything, she whispered. He didn't look up. No, but I owe Matt. He paused just long enough for the words to settle. And I owe you. Clara swallowed hard. Her instinct screamed to hide, to run, to shrink into shadows where no one could spit her name again. But Jonah's quiet certainty, steady as a fence post driven deep in hard earth, held her in place. He mounted, then held a hand down to her. Ride with me. Her pulse jumped. In front of everyone? In front of them, he said simply. We do this together. Clara drew a trembling breath, shifted the twins to one arm, and took his hand. His grip was warm, grounding, something solid she didn't know she needed. He lifted her onto the saddle before him, his arm steadying her waist. The twins settled safely between them. As they rode toward town, Clara felt Dry Hollow stretching before them, small, dusty, tight-lipped, like a mouth ready to spit. Every clop of the horse's hooves drummed against her ribs. "You don't have to speak," Jonah murmured, sensing her trembling. "But I want to," she whispered. "I want the truth to have a voice." He didn't say anything else, but she felt him exhale, a heavy breath he'd held for years. When they reached the center of town, heads snapped up. Conversations froze mid-word. Doors creaked open. Someone muttered, "There they are!" Another spat. A third whispered, "Crowley said she'd be back." Dragging trouble. But Jonah nudged the horse forward, leading them straight toward the old church steps where Barrett Crowley already stood, flanked by two of his men, dressed too fine for this dusty place, eyes sharp like knives polished in arrogance. Crowley folded his arms. "Jonah Mercer, Clara Reyes, brought yourself an audience." He smirked. "What story do you aim to spin today?" Jonah dismounted and lifted Clara down, steadying her before turning to face Crowley. "We're not spinning stories, just speaking the truth." Crowley barked a laugh. This ought to be good. Jonah didn't give him room to interrupt. He turned, raising his voice so the gathering crowd could hear. "Most of you know my brother Matt left Dry Hollow years back. Some of you heard he ran. Some heard worse." Murmurs rippled. Clara felt her knees weaken, but she stepped forward anyway, clutching the twins to her chest. Jonah's hand brushed her back, silent support she could lean into. "The truth," Jonah continued, "is that he didn't run. He was forced out, threatened, lied about, cut off from what was his." Crowley took a step forward. "Careful, Mercer. That's a mighty serious accusation." "I know." Jonah reached into his coat. Crowley stiffened. The townsfolk gasped, but Jonah didn't pull a gun. He pulled a folded, weather-worn letter. The letter. Matt's last. He held it up. "This is in my brother's handwriting. A letter he wrote before he died. In it, he speaks of a woman he meant to marry. A woman this town judged. A woman pushed out by the very men who later claimed she wasn't worth protecting." Clara swallowed, every eye turning to her. She felt the heat of shame crawling up her throat, until Jonah stepped closer, placing himself between her and the crowd, not to shield her, but to anchor her. "She didn't run," Jonah said. "She was chased, hurt, left in the dirt while carrying his children." A shock rippled through the crowd, sharp, immediate. "She bore twins," he said softly. "My brother's daughters." Clara closed her eyes. The gasps around her felt like blows, but also like cracks opening in old lies. Crowley scoffed loudly. "You expect anyone to believe that? Where's your proof besides a dead man's scribbles?" Jonah's gaze turned cold. "Right here." He handed the pendant, MR, to Clara. She lifted it with shaking fingers so the crowd could see. "Matt wore this every day. I saw it. I held it." Her voice trembled, but steadied as she continued. "I loved him, and I buried him in my heart long before Dry Hollow pretended he never existed." Crowley's jaw tightened. Clara went on, voice rising, raw and trembling, but unbroken. "You want to call me names?" she said, scanning the faces. "Guilt me for not giving a man sons? Punish me for my blood? Fine." Her breath shook. "But don't you dare pretend you didn't know what was done to me. To him. To these children." Someone in the crowd murmured, "Lord have mercy." Jonah stepped beside her, his voice firm. Crowley forged the land papers. He drove Matt off. He meant to erase everything Mercer that didn't serve him. The crowd shifted. Eyes turned uncertain. Doubt ignited. Crowley barked, "Those are lies!" But his voice cracked at the edges. Jonah stepped forward. "You scared of the truth, Barrett? Scared folks'll realize Matt Mercer didn't die running. He died because men like you couldn't stand someone who wouldn't bow down." A hush fell so heavy it might have smothered the whole street. Clara's heart hammered. Jonah's words hit harder than any gunshot, because they were the truth finally spoken aloud. Then a voice rose from the crowd. Martha Hale. "I knew Matt," she said quietly. "He was a good boy, and Crowley's men sure rode out awful fast the night he died." Crowley's face paled, and in that small crack, one brave voice, the whole weight of Dry Hollow began to tilt, because the truth had finally surfaced, and Crowley no longer controlled the story. Night settled on Dry Hollow like a heavy blanket, thick with tension and dust. At Mercy Ridge Ranch, every board of the cabin seemed to hold its breath. Clara stood near the hearth with the twins tucked against her chest, rocking them gently while Jonah checked the windows and doors for the third time. "Jonah," she whispered, "you think he'll come tonight?" He paused, hand still on the shutter. "Crowley's pride took a wound today. Men like him don't bleed quiet." His eyes lifted to hers, steady and grave. "Yes, he'll come." The answer chilled her, but there was something else beneath it. Confidence, not panic. Jonah Mercer was bracing for a storm, but he wasn't afraid of it anymore. Clara swallowed and forced a nod. "Then I'll be ready too." Jonah stepped in front of her, brushing a thumb across her cheekbone. "I don't want you running into danger." "I'm not running," she said softly. "Not anymore." A beat passed. Jonah's chest rose and fell, slow and heavy with something like pride. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying with it the faintest tremor of hooves. Jonah's head snapped toward the door. "They're here." Clara clutched the twins tighter. "How many?" Jonah grabbed his coat and rifle, jaw tightening. "More than one. Maybe more than three." The hooves grew louder, then stopped abruptly outside the ranch gate. Lantern lights swung wildly across the yard, shadows lurching like restless spirits. A voice cut through the dark. "Mercer, bring out the woman and her whelps." Clara flinched. Jonah's face turned to stone. He stepped outside, closing the door behind him but not latching it, leaving Clara a narrow view through the crack between hinges. 4 riders loomed in the yard, their horses snorting clouds of cold breath. At their front sat Barrett Crowley, dressed in a coat too fine for a night raid, smugness sharp as a dagger on his lips. "Evenin', Mercer," Crowley drawled. "Thought we'd drop by for what you owe." Jonah walked toward him, unarmed in hand, but not unprepared. "I owe you nothing." Crowley's smirk widened. "You owe me blood that ain't yours, property that ain't yours, a woman who ain't—" "That's enough," Jonah snapped, voice cracking through the cold like a whip. Clara, watching from the shadowed crack, felt her breath stick in her throat. Crowley leaned forward in the saddle. "You bring out those girls right now, or we take 'em ourselves, along with your precious ranch." One of Crowley's men dismounted, swaggering toward the door. Clara stepped back, trembling, pressing her body over the twins like a shield. Her mind screamed, her heart thundered, her knees shook, but she didn't move away. Outside, Jonah's voice rumbled low. "You set one boot on that porch, you'd best be ready to lose the leg attached to it." The man froze. Crowley scoffed. You won't shoot. Jonah looked him dead in the eye. I ain't here to kill you, Barrett, but I'll see you crawl home if you force me. Crowley opened his mouth to retort, but another voice rose from the dark behind Jonah. You ain't standing alone tonight, son. Lanterns flared. Footsteps shuffled. Clara gasped. Martha Hale strode forward, shotgun in hand, silver hair loose in the wind. Behind her came 3 townsfolk, quiet men, tired-looking women, holding tools, rifles, torches. People who'd once only whispered in corners of the saloon now stepped into the lantern light with their backs straight. They were standing with Jonah, with Clara, not with Crowley. Crowley jerked his reins. What's this foolishness? You siding with him? Martha's voice cut through the dark like a blade sharpened by years of truth. We're siding with what's right, something you wouldn't know if it bit you. A few of the riders shifted uneasily. Jonah didn't look back at the people behind him, but Clara saw the subtle release of his shoulders, an unspoken breath he hadn't allowed himself in years. Crowley snarled, Bunch of cowards! I'll burn this place down before I let you steal what's mine. Jonah took one step forward, enough to place himself firmly in Crowley's line of attack. Ranch wasn't yours to begin with, and neither are those children. Crowley's face twisted. Then I'll take what's left of your pride instead. He lunged. Jonah met him halfway. The yard exploded into chaos. Fists, boots, dust swirling under frantic hooves. Clara flinched at every shout, but didn't pull away from the doorway. She couldn't. She wouldn't. One rider tried to break toward the porch. Before Jonah even turned, Clara stepped outside, blocking the door with her own body, twins held against her. Her voice trembled but didn't break. You will not touch them, she said. The man hesitated. She didn't. If you want them, you go through me, she whispered. And something in her eyes, fear mixed with a mother's resolve, sent the man stumbling back. Meanwhile, Jonah took a blow to the jaw, staggered, then slammed Crowley into the dirt. The crowd behind Jonah shouted encouragement, their voices weaving into something Clara had never felt in Dry Hollow. Support, solidarity, refusal to bow. Crowley scrambled backward, humiliated and bruised. This ain't over! Jonah wiped blood from his lip. It is for tonight. Crowley mounted his horse with shaking hands. His riders followed, less confident than before. They rode off into the dark, their shouts fading with the distance. Silence settled, heavy, trembling, victorious. Clara sank to her knees, sobbing soft, kissing the twins' foreheads. Martha hurried to her side, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. Jonah approached, breath ragged, knuckles split, shirt torn. He knelt in front of Clara, touching her cheek with a gentleness that contradicted the battle he'd just fought. You, all right? He whispered. She nodded, eyes shining through tears. You stood for us. Jonah's voice broke. No, Clara. We stood for each other. And for the first time, Dry Hollow finally saw what Mercy Ridge truly was. Not just a ranch, a family worth fighting for. Morning crept over Mercy Ridge with a strange kind of quiet. The kind that settles after a storm, when the dust hasn't quite decided whether to rise again or finally rest. Clara Reyes sat on the porch steps with the twins bundled against her chest, watching the sun crawl over the broken fence posts and trodden earth where the fight had raged just hours earlier. Her body ached, her heart even more so. Jonah Mercer stepped out of the barn, rolling down his sleeves. He moved slower than usual, the stiffness in his shoulders betraying the bruises blooming under his shirt. But his eyes, tired, dark, steady, were fixed on Clara. "You sleep at all?" he asked. "Barely," she murmured. "You?" He shook his head. "Didn't feel right closing my eyes until I knew the ranch was safe." Clara swallowed. "Jonah, I never meant for any of this to fall on you." He leaned against the porch rail, studying her with that calm, earnest gaze that made her feel seen and scared at the same time. "Reckon it didn't fall on me? I stepped into it myself." Clara looked away, unable to hold the weight of those words. Before either spoke again, the crunch of wagon wheels sounded down the path. Clara tensed, gripping the twins tighter, heart pounding. But Jonah's posture remained calm, alert, but not afraid. A covered wagon rolled into view, pulled by 2 gray mules. A man in a long coat stepped down, carrying a leather satchel. Behind him came another, this one with spectacles and a notary's stamp hanging from his neck. "Morning, Mr. Mercer," the first man called. "Name's Deputy Hollis. We rode up from Larkspur County." Clara's pulse quickened. Larkspur was bigger than Dry Hollow. More law, less gossip. Jonah didn't move from the rail. "What brings you gentlemen all the way out here?" Hollis tipped his hat. "Word reached our office of forged land papers, intimidation, and assault tied to Mr. Barrett Crowley. Needed to verify some matters." Clara's breath caught. Jonah's jaw flexed. The notary opened his folder. "We've reviewed copies of the Mercer land deeds from 20 years ago. Turns out your brother, Matthew Mercer, was still co-owner of this ranch at his time of death. His line holds legal rights." Clara nearly dropped the twins. Jonah stepped forward slowly. "Meaning?" "Meaning," Hollis continued. "Any heirs of Matthew Mercer are rightful inheritors of his share." The twins stirred, sensing their mother's trembling. Clara whispered, "Jonah, they mean—" He nodded faintly, eyes locked on the officers. "They mean these girls." The notary gave a solemn nod. "Whether the town likes it or not, they are Mercers by blood. Which means Barrett Crowley's claim to this land is void. Permanently." Clara covered her mouth, tears burning her eyes. The weight she'd carried for months, the terror, the shame, the fear of being hunted, shifted inside her chest. It didn't disappear, but it loosened. Deputy Hollis added, "Crowley left Dry Hollow before dawn. Looks like he won't be bothering you anytime soon. But if he does, he'll be answering to the territorial court." Jonah let out the first steady breath Clara had seen since the fight. "Thank you." The officers tipped their hats and rode off, leaving the dust to settle behind them. Clara remained frozen on the steps, staring at the horizon where the government wagon disappeared. "Jonah," her voice trembled. "This ranch, it's yours. It always was. You shouldn't have to carry us on it." Jonah knelt in front of her, just as he had the night the truth came out. Only now, there was no shame in his eyes, no fear, just resolve. "Clara," he said softly, "Matt's blood runs in these girls. That ties them to this land, ties you to it too. But I don't want to be a burden. You're not." His voice deepened, firm enough to anchor her. "Listen, this ranch stood too long on silence and regret. I'm done keeping it that way." Clara blinked through tears. "What do you mean?" He reached out, brushing a stray curl behind her ear with calloused fingers surprisingly gentle. "I'm saying it plain. This land ain't worth a damn if it doesn't hold the people I aim to spend my life protecting." Her breath hitched. "Jonah." He swallowed hard, emotion roughening his voice. I thought I wanted solitude, a quiet life. Turns out I just didn't know how to want anything better. Until you set foot here." Clara's eyes filled again, but not with fear this time. "Stop thinking you're a curse," he murmured. "You and these little ones, you're the closest thing to purpose I've felt in years." She lowered her head, letting his words sink into places inside her that had never known gentleness. "Jonah," she whispered, "I don't know how to belong. Not really. Not after everything." He took her free hand, strong and warm around her trembling fingers. "Then let me show you. Let all three of us learn it together." The twins gurgled softly, their tiny hands reaching outward as if answering him. Clara broke then, not in despair, but in something that felt painfully like healing. She leaned forward until her forehead rested against his. "Okay," she breathed. "I'll try. For them. For you. For us," he corrected. Behind them, Mercy Ridge Ranch lay quiet, but no longer empty. It was beginning to feel like something new, something alive, something worth fighting for. And in that morning light, for the first time, Clara dared to believe she might have a place in it. Evening settled soft over Mercy Ridge, the kind of quiet that made Clara's heart ache in a way she didn't fully understand. She rocked the twins beside the hearth when Jonah stepped onto the porch, hovering like a man holding something too heavy for his chest. "You're thinking hard," she murmured. Jonah sat beside her, elbows on his knees. "Clara, I need to say something, and I ain't good with words." She waited, breath tight. "I thought I was saving you that night," he said softly. "But truth is, you and those little girls saved me, pulled me out of years of living half dead." Clara's eyes burned. "Jonah." He reached for her hand, warm and steady. "I don't want to just guard this place, or guard you. I want a home with you, a life, if you'll have me." Clara shook her head once, fear rising. "I'm not a woman men choose." "I am choosing you," he whispered, voice low and certain. "Scars and all." Her breath broke. The twins stirred softly between them. Clara leaned forward, forehead touching his. "Yes," she whispered. "I want that too." And in that small, trembling moment, Mercy Ridge finally felt like a place meant for them all. Clara stood before the small mirror, smoothing the plain cotton dress Martha had washed for her. It wasn't white, wasn't lace, but it was clean, and for once, she didn't feel unworthy wearing it. The twins cooed in their baskets, wrapped warm in Jonah's best quilts. Martha appeared at the door with a proud smile. "You ready, child?" "As I'll ever be," Clara whispered. Outside, Jonah waited beneath the cottonwood tree, hands twisting his hat, nerves written all over him. When Clara stepped into the sunlight, he stared like breath had left him entirely. "You look," his voice broke, "like hope finally came true." The ceremony was simple. Just Martha, a weathered Bible, and a handful of neighbors who'd stood with them in the dark. Jonah took Clara's hands, thumbs brushing her scars with reverence. "I promise," he said, voice shaking. "My silence won't ever hide truth again. I'll stand with you. Always." Clara blinked back tears. "And I promise no one under this roof will ever feel unwanted. Not while I'm here." Martha closed the Bible. "Then by truth spoken today, you are husband and wife." Jonah kissed Clara's forehead softly, and Mercy Ridge felt reborn. A year later, Mercy Ridge no longer felt like a lonely patch of land. It breathed with life. Children's laughter echoed between the barns. Goats bleated in the pasture, and the porch held boots belonging to people who once had nowhere else to go. Clara moved through the yard with a basket of laundry, watching the twins, now toddling, chase each other through the dust, their giggles bright as morning sun. Jonah stepped out of the barn, wiping sweat from his brow, pausing just to take in the sight of them. "Never thought this place could sound so alive," he murmured. Clara smiled softly. "Neither did I." That evening, as dusk settled, Jonah pulled out the old MR pendant. He sat beside Clara on the porch swing and handed it to her. "Thought we might add something to it." Together, they pressed tiny new letters into the metal, initials for the twins, and a small C for Clara, melding past and present into one symbol. Jonah hung the pendant above the doorway, where it caught the last light of day. Clara leaned into him, the twins curled at their feet. "I thought that night on the prairie was my last day alive," she whispered. Jonah kissed her hair. "Turns out it was your first." And so, dear friends, our journey across Mercy Ridge comes to a close. Clara, Jonah, and the two little girls found not just safety, but a home built from courage, forgiveness, and the quiet kind of love that grows stronger with every sunrise. Their story reminds us that no matter how many years pass, the heart still knows how to heal and how to choose hope again. If this tale brought back a memory, a feeling, or a moment from your own life, I'd be honored if you shared it in the comments. Many of you watching have traveled long roads, some gentle, some rough, and your wisdom makes this little community feel like a circle around a warm fire on a cold night. If you'd like more stories like this, soft, heartfelt Western tales filled with second chances, please consider giving this video a like, subscribing to the channel, and tapping the bell so you won't miss the next chapter. Every little bit truly helps. Thank you for spending these minutes with us today. May your evening be peaceful, your heart light, and may you always find a place where you belong.